This is East Midlands Today with Anne Davis and me, Dominic Heel.
Tonight, is HS2 heading for the sidings?
It's already $3 billion over budget. One MP thinks it'll never be built.
I think we'll derail this. I think the media are already turning against it. The people are turning against it. The more people find out about HS2 and the arguments around it, the less they're going to like it. And I welcome the debate.
A very good evening and welcome to the programme. First tonight, have the wheels come off plans for high-speed rail through our region? The government's own spending watchdog has questioned whether there really is a business case for the new line. And a Conservative MP has told this programme that he believes it could actually damage the region's economy. Well, to tell us more, our reporter Simon Hare is at Towton in Nottinghamshire. Simon, good evening to you.
Good evening. Yes, this is Towton Sidings in Nottinghamshire, which, as we all know by now, is where we in the East Midlands will catch one of these high-speed trains from if and when it's built. But that little word if just got a bit bigger today after the government's own economic thinking came in for some pretty strong criticism. It's supposed to be the railway network of the future, HS2. It means high-speed rail, arriving here in the East Midlands in 20 years' time, with the aim of creating jobs and opportunities, a fast track towards regional growth. But can a train going a bit faster to London actually deliver that? Today, the government's own spending watchdog questioned whether the £53 billion the project will cost will actually bring any economic benefits to the region.
At the moment, the business case was to support the decision to build the line between London and Birmingham. Obviously, the department wants the scheme to go up to Manchester and to Leeds, and we think that they need to develop that business case in detail now so that we can see where the economic benefits and where the new jobs and the growth will come from.
It would be the easiest thing in the world for the government to do would not to be build this. We're actually looking at the future. We're looking how this country competes in the future. We're in a global race and we've got to show that Britain is a place to come and invest in.
4 key benefits. The first is quicker journey times to London and beyond hub airport Europe. The second is interconnectivity around our region, linking Birmingham, Sheffield, Derby, Nottingham and Leeds. The third is a fantastic business location at the rail station close to East Midlands Airport. That's a real opportunity. And the fourth, which we often forget about, is the benefits to local firms who are employed in the rail sector, such as Bombardier, but also the smaller firms in the supply chain. And if we can win the contracts, that will be significant.
Yet one of the region's MPs, who'll see HS2 travel through his constituency without stopping, said he wasn't hearing any loud calls from business for the route to be built.
I've spent 25 years in business, chairman of the East Midlands Institute of Directors, met tens of thousands of business people, and not one of them has ever said the reason their business isn't thriving is because they can't get to London fast enough. It's a spurious argument.
It'll be possible to work in London every day and commute on this train into London. Well, that's not going to help local economies. On the contrary, it's going to draw more and more talent from these areas in the north and the Midlands into London.
Simon Hare, BBC East Midlands Today. Well, I'm joined now by Andrew Bodman from the HS2 Action Alliance Pressure Group. Andrew, do you feel pretty vindicated by what the National Audit Office have said today?
Yes, I do. And what they have said really supports things we've been saying for the last 3 years in terms of it's not going to help on a national regeneration basis. It's not good value for money and it's not needed in terms of capacity.
But we're going to see investment in places like Towton here and perhaps other rail companies just down the road in Derby may benefit surely.
There will obviously be some local companies benefiting, but it's possibly questionable as to whether the local bombardier will actually benefit from that. But on the other hand, a lot of jobs and prospects may well actually be transported down to London, and that isn't good for the local situation.
Now, other people have been saying that as well today. Do you think this is the beginning of the end for HS2?
Well, that remains to be seen, and it's down to the government and politicians to make these decisions. But HS2 Action Alliance is still going to go on fighting our corner, and next month in June we're going back to the High Courts again because we're appealing one of the judicial review decisions that was made earlier this year.
OK, well, we'll see how that goes on. Andrew Bodman from H2 Action Alliance, many thanks.
Also on Midlands Today this evening, Doubts over HS2 claims there's a £3 billion funding gap and not enough evidence of the economic benefits.
It's saying that the business case isn't proven, that the things that the government are saying, like it's going to be this magic wand that's going to cure the north-south divide, they just don't see it.
Questions have been asked today about the evidence into the economic benefit of the high-speed rail line that'll link Birmingham to London. Does it stack up? The National Audit Office says there's a £3.3 billion funding gap and the economic case for the line hasn't been properly made. But the government insists HS2 will benefit the region. Well, our transport correspondent Peter Plisner joins us from Eastside in Birmingham, where there are plans for an HS2 station. Now, Peter, what exactly does this report say?
Well, Nick, it's a pretty damning report. Among other things, it says that evidence on how HS2 will benefit the region's economy is poorly articulated. It also says there's limited evidence about how busy other rail lines like the West Coast Main Line to London will get in the future. It also questions the timescale for building HS2, which it says could be over-ambitious. Now, those who are opposed to the line have always had reservations about the business case. Today they've been calling for the line to be scrapped.
I think that the National Audit Office report is great news. They're saying what we've been saying for the last 3 years, that the case for HS2 has been fabricated, that they've been using out-of-date data, that they can't prove that the things that they're saying are going to happen, and the figures are wrong.
What about those who support HS2, Peter? Surely they don't agree there's no business case?
Well, Nick, they do agree that there's some work still needs to be done to the business case naturally, but they feel that there's no doubt about what benefits HS2 will deliver here.
What do we know and what don't we know? These projects can only be assessed at the moment by counting time. That's the only thing they can measure. We know when you put big projects in like this, you get other benefits. You get new businesses setting up. You get jobs being created. Stuff happens when people can get to places quicker.
What about the issue of capacity on existing lines? Are trains going to get too busy?
Well, we've always been told that something like the West Coast Main Line to London will run out of capacity in the year 2025, but of course that depends on forecasts from the past, and we know we've had a recession and the economy is sluggish at the moment, so can you rely on those forecasts and those assumptions? Bottom line is fewer people may travel and that will mean less people using HS2.
Also tonight, is it still on track? Just weeks after announcing its route, there are doubts tonight over the high-speed 2 rail link to the northwest.
It's been billed as a massive economic boost for the northwest, but just 3 months after our stage of the high-speed 2 rail route was announced, there are doubts tonight about the project. A critical report by the National Audit Office says it's not clear how HS2 will benefit the economy in the regions.
Rail campaigners and businesses, though, say it should go ahead, and the government insists it will create thousands of jobs. But the report also claims that there is a £3 billion funding gap. Andy Gill has been finding out more.
If it's built, HS2 will slash journey times between London and parts of the northwest. The idea is that that brings prosperity and jobs. But the National Audit Office says the government hasn't made that case strongly enough yet.
They need to be more specific about where they think those economic benefits are going to come from and how they implement the programme, how that will help it achieve those benefits.
HS2 trains would stop at Crewe, at Manchester and at the airport. Trains to London from there would take 59 minutes. From the city centre, an hour and 8 minutes. But one expert says high-speed trains make it easier to bring jobs back to capital cities, and the northwest could lose jobs.
If a high-speed train stops, it's not high speed. So lots of people will not benefit in any way at all from high-speed rail. And I'm particularly bothered about places like Warrington and Liverpool, because I think they will lose lots of jobs.
Pro-HS2 campaigners say it can benefit regions.
When you look around the world at places like Paris to Lille, Lille has hugely benefited in terms of jobs from that connectivity. So it hasn't just benefited the centres, it's benefited the regions as well.
The HS2 line is due to run right through Paul Taylor's industrial estate in Warrington. 500 jobs would be lost here if that happens. But he still wants HS2 to go ahead, just on a different route.
Definitely. I think the benefits to the whole country would be incredible. The increase in the capacity, increase in the speed, it's vital for us at the moment. So anyone who's travelled on the trains knows that.
The Transport Secretary, Patrick McLaughlin, says he does not accept the National Audit Office conclusions about the HS2 line, which is due to run through here. He says that's because they're using out-of-date figures, and he says without HS2, the rail links between the North West and London will be overwhelmed. The first HS2 trains are due to start running in 2026. Andy Gill, BBC North West Tonight.
The economic benefits of the planned HS2 rail line have been questioned by the government's independent watchdog. Campaigners in Buckinghamshire say the National Audit Office criticisms give weight to their call for the high-speed project to be scrapped. But the government and supporters have disputed the findings. Stuart Timworth has been following the day's developments and joins me now. Stuart, are protesters claiming a victory today?
Well, certainly campaigners have been telling me that this is a devastating blow to HS2. They feel their long-running arguments, well, essentially they've been backed up and been given weight by this report today. Well, the National Audit Office says the government's short of around £3 billion. That's around 10% of this scheme, which carries a price tag of around £33 billion. Now, of course, the money, well, it's a big issue, of course, but the watchdog also looks at claims that this will be good for the economy, particularly in the north. And it's also queried, the suggestion of how many people will be using it, looking at that level of demand. Now, these are things, of course, that campaigners have always argued.
It's an absolutely devastating report, quite frankly, for the government. If you look at the key findings, basically it says that the government has been using out-of-date data, inaccurate assumptions, and there are key omissions in the whole business case. What this does is actually prove what we've been saying, and independent analysts have been saying for the last 2 years, that there really is no business case for this.
This report is pretty scathing. What's the government had to say?
Well, today rail ministers, they've come out fighting and they've told us that the sums will add up.
We certainly do not recognise the figures that the NAO have highlighted. What I think has happened is they are reaching conclusions in May 2013 based on a business case from December 2011, 18 months ago, and since then considerable things have moved forward.
Well, indeed, recently they have announced the full route to Leeds and Manchester. They've also seen off a number of high-profile legal challenges, of course, including one partly funded by Buckinghamshire County Council. And as we heard there, they say this report has been prepared using figures that are out of date. Of course, the row comes on the day that HS2 Limited has outlined a number of consultations for Buckinghamshire happening at the end of this month. They'll be looking at the environmental impact and ways that they can reduce it. Of course, campaigners have a very simple answer for that, Geraldine, which is simply to scrap the scheme altogether.